Well, good morning, Robertson Chapel. What a full house today. Good to see everyone. Glad that you're here. I want to begin in a little different fashion this morning. In a church like St. Luke's that does so much and we offer so much, it is easy to always talk about what's next. Here's why we need volunteers now. Here's what we're doing next. And to not pause and just celebrate the many great things we have done and what's going on. So we want to take a moment to start the message today and celebrate not only the things we've done, but the people through whom those things have done. So as I share these, in a moment, I'll ask for your response. And when we celebrate our volunteers, I want you to cheer like something unimaginable, like the Colts scoring a game-winning touchdown at the end of the game. Just absolutely unimaginable. Imagine that feeling and just let it come out of you. All right, you ready? One Sunday, a few months ago, the leader of our United Women of Faith, Lori Chambers, asked Pastor Jen if she would pray with her after the service. They were without a leader for a longtime community program, so they prayed about that. Well, after the prayer, Lori went to her Sunday school class. She shared about the program needs, and lo and behold, John Selenick, a new face to the program, said he could participate. Now, as it turns out, John actually walked into the wrong class that day. He meant to go to a different class, and he just stumbled into this one. And so for months now, John has been leading a team of people in a food rescue program called Feed Everyone. John picks up food from places like Trader Joe's and delivers them to the Dove Recovery House for women who are recovering from addiction. The Dove House depends heavily on this food each week to support their residents. Like John, so many people here at St. Luke's volunteer and serve in our community as school tutors, as nonprofit board members, court advocates, at our local food pantry, and lots of other places. If you serve or volunteer in any way in our community, if you give of your time and talents in service to the well-being and the flourishing of our neighbors, would you stand? Those of you involved in community ministries, would you stand? And let's cheer for these folks. Yeah! Thank you. Let me just say, I think that cheer was more of getting a first down worthy, so you'll get another shot at this, and we can maybe get the Colts over the line. All right, another story. Barb retired from her job in marketing and communications. She moved to Indianapolis and started looking for a church, and after a couple of tries, found St. Luke's and immediately knew that this was her church home. She started looking for ways to give back. She said people had poured into her life as a teen, a young adult, and as a single mom. She received so much from others. She wanted to give back, especially now that she was without work commitments. She was invited to help with the New Here ministry and wound up welcoming people at the Connection Center. For more than 10 years, she has volunteered on that team so that she could welcome people on Sundays. And she loves it because it feels like every Sunday she gets to remind people that faith brings joy, that St. Luke's welcomes everyone and that we mean it. Well, a couple weeks ago, a visitor said, "We're visiting here, and we are a family with 2 dads. Do you have families like us?" She said, "I don't know numbers, but I know that we will celebrate the journey of your family as we do with all of our families, and so we are glad you're here." She said the look on his face was a bit surprised, but noted that they would indeed be back. She said serving brings her a great deal of fulfillment. Many of you serve inside the ministries of St. Luke's. This summer, we ask you to serve in our vacation Bible school, middle school, and freedom school ministries for kids. We said we want everyone all in for kids, and you were. 301 of you volunteered to impact 447 kids and make an impact in their lives. So thanks to those of you who serve with our kids and with our youth, who usher, who play an instrument, sing in a praise team, paint our building, serve on an administrative committee or leadership team, volunteers with our care team, being a part of the hospitality team, serving in outreach and justice ministries, supporting contemplation and creative care work, and a lot more. So I want to thank all of those who serve in some capacity in the life of St. Luke's. And if you do, in any capacity, would you stand for just a moment? Those of you who serve in any way. And let's get them over the goal line. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Touchdown Jesus on that one. There we go. Go Notre Dame. You know, we don't do that enough. We don't celebrate as well as we could and should what goes on. And I believe if you ask people like those who were just standing, those who stood before, many, many others who do a lot in the church, and you ask, why do you do that? Why do you serve the way you do? I really don't believe that anybody would say, well, because I feel like I have to. It's a duty. I mean, I feel a sense of obligation. Or even saying something like, well, I'm afraid God would punish me if I didn't. I don't think they'd say anything like that. I think what they would say is, I do it because of what I get out of it. That the generosity of my time and my service opens me up to receive. And that falls right in line with responses we got in the generosity survey I mentioned last week. We sent a survey with just a few simple questions asking United Methodists around the country who are known to be generous people. That doesn't mean they're all rich. Generous in lots of different ways, like, why do you do it? How does your faith influence you? What do you get out of it? And this little 3-week series we're doing is highlighting the most common responses people gave. So last week we talked about the most common response that people said, I believe I am blessed. That's part of why I want to give back. I believe I'm blessed by God. Well, today we look at another response, that it's better to give than to receive. Listen to just a few of the things that people said in the survey. When I act out of generosity, I feel satisfied, happy, and peaceful. I believe the more you give, the more you get. As I give away kindness and love, I get the same in return. Whenever I give, I receive. Now that sounds almost identical to something Jesus said, that it is more blessed to give than to receive. We know that Jesus said that not because of what Jesus said in the Gospels. It's because of what Paul said. Toward the end of the book of Acts, Paul is on his last missionary journey heading toward Jerusalem, and he knows, he just has an innate sense that when he gets there, he will be arrested. The political climate is not in his favor. Things have turned against not only him personally, but what he stands for. So he makes one last stop at the port of Ephesus. Leaders of the church come out to greet him, and everybody knows this is going to be the last time they see each other. And so Paul is sharing with them about not only this reality, but what's important to him. And he talks about his desire to keep giving. That if everything in the world were taken away from him and his options in life become very few, one thing cannot be taken away: his ability to see whatever he has as an opportunity to do something for other people, and that's what I'm going to do. And then he says, because remember what Jesus said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. Why did Paul believe that? Why did Jesus say that? Why would Paul believe that when things turn against you to such a degree that you get attacked for it, and you really do believe it's better to focus on doing stuff for others? Why would Jesus say that in a world that crucifies people, where people do not emulate the love and the compassion of God? Why didn't Jesus say to the followers, now, I'm going to be crucified, but hang in there. Stiff upper lip. Just keep pushing on. Why did he say, remember, it's better to give than receive? One reason that I believe Paul believed that and that Jesus said it is because it's true. In a very practical sense, generosity makes us better. Now, science proves this claim. Many studies have been done looking at the connection between physical health and generosity. And many of these studies talk about the benefits of generosity, practicing generosity. One study done by the Cleveland Clinic shows that for generous people, what they call the feel-good chemicals of the body, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, that these get released when we practice generosity. It makes us feel good. It also shows how generosity produces better mental health, lower stress, lower blood pressure, improved sleep, and more. It's kind of like the opposite of a drug commercial on TV. You ever notice these drug commercials? You see somebody just in bliss because they're taking some drug that does something for them, and then you hear this voice that says, now, side effects may include, and they go through everything. I mean, could include heart attack, could include cancer, could include bowel obstruction, urinary tract infection, losing your hair, on and on and on it goes. It's like, I think I'll stick with what I got. Why take that risk? Generosity, science says, is just the opposite. You practice generosity, and these good things start to happen for you. But it's not just the physical health benefits. There's something deeper. There's something emotional that happens for us that we need to happen. Things like joy in our lives. How many of you, and don't raise a hand, don't respond, but would say, yeah, if you ask me, I need more joy in my life right now. If you were to say yes, then understand that there are significant aspects of joy that are released only through generosity. My first church was in the rural mountains of North Carolina. For those of you old enough to remember, Claude Frazier wrote a book called Cold Mountain. It's a real place. My first church was at the base of Cold Mountain. I learned in seminary that when it comes to stewardship and giving, you have to present a compelling case. Give people a good reason why their giving is going to make a difference. And guess who the case giver is? That's my job as a pastor. If I'm going to be effective, I've got to give you a good, compelling case. Well, while I was at this church, our conference wanted to offer its first ever building team to South Africa. These were back in the days of apartheid. And we were partnering with a Methodist community in a black township in South Africa. And they were putting together a team of what they hoped would be about 20 people to go and work with this community to build a church. Well, here in this remote, tiny little church, two men said, we want to go. We want to volunteer. So we started raising money to help send them. Now, there was a woman who lived across the road from the church named Betty Henson. Betty, by statistics, would have fit the definition of poverty. Now, if you ask Betty, are you poor? Ooh, there's no way she would say yes. But she would have fit the statistics. She did not have much. So I presented the compelling case. This is an opportunity for us to make a difference in South Africa. Let's do this. Let's help send our people there. And one day I got a check in the mail from Betty for $200. This was in 1988. I knew she could not afford that. I went to see her. I said, Betty, I don't want you to feel like you need to do this. Honestly, you know why I went there? I was feeling guilty. I thought I had done such an amazing job of building a compelling case that I made this poor woman feel guilty and that she was going to give beyond her means. So I wanted to relieve my guilt. We had a country club beside the church. We had a lot of people from that country club who went to the church. I knew we would raise the money. And I took Betty's check and I said, Betty, I want you to take this back. I know you can't afford to do this. We will be able to do this. Only time she got stern with me. She took that check and she pressed it back into the palm of my hand and looked me in the eye and said, Rob, do not deny me this joy. Now, I had been to seminary and I had taken classes on stewardship, but that day Betty Henson gave me an education in generosity. That there are things inside of us that don't get a chance to get out without practicing generosity. Don't deny me this joy. I believe Jesus said it is better to give than to receive because it's true. There are just practical benefits to it. But you know what? I think it goes beyond that. That another reason it's true is because generosity deepens our hope. Generosity deepens our hope. I think one reason so many church folks don't like sermons on stewardship and giving, because when you bring up those words, pledge, give, stewardship, their minds go immediately to what they're giving up, to what they're losing, that they're going to have less. But what if we related those words to gain? What is it that we get to receive because of generosity? And what we receive is hope. You know what hope is? Hope is the practical demonstrations of a faith in God when we do not have any practical reason to justify it. That's hope. Think about what Jesus said in Luke. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Now, that's a rather obtuse statement. I heard a pastor one time explain it this way. He said that statement reminds him of when he raked leaves as a kid. He said, that's the way I earned money. I'd go around the neighborhoods at this time of year. You need me to rake your leaves, they'd pay me a little bit of money. And so my dad always taught me, when you rake leaves and you put them in a bag and you fill the bag, don't tie the bag up yet. Get in the bag. Stomp the leaves down. Take the bag, squeeze it together, and guess what? Oh, you got room for more. Then put more in there. Stomp them down again. Squeeze the bag. How many of you have done that before? You know, you keep squeezing and you keep doing it, and you realize, I can put more and more and more in. Generosity is like that. You press it down. You squeeze it tight because you discover, you make room now for more to be poured in. What does that look like? There's an article in a national publication some years ago called An Irrational Act. It was about a young man who, when he was a boy, grew up in a very kind of a legalistic church, that they taught that tithing is what you better do, giving 10% of your income to the church. And if you don't tithe, God will punish you. Well, when this guy got out of school, he ran from tithing and he ran from the church. As it turns out, he got an engineering and a law degree from prestigious colleges, got married, had a child, bought a house mortgage, had credit card debt. He and his wife actually started attending church again. And one Sunday, the preacher preached on tithing. And he was just like, oh, I hate this Sunday. Hate this Sunday. But the preacher never said anything about responsibility. He didn't put guilt on anyone. He said tithing liberates us. It sets us free. Now, at the same time, this husband and his wife had been talking about, why can't we save money? We're both earning huge salaries. Why do we never have any surplus? If we don't start saving for the future, what's going to happen? But they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't make it happen. So he listened with what this preacher was saying. He said, tithing opens us up to what God can do. Yes, if you tithe, you're losing 10%. You've got 10% less. But that's so that we can learn God can do more with our 90% than we can by ourselves. Now, the preacher said, he went even further. He goes, now, I want you to understand, this is not a gimmick to get you to give more money to the church. So to be fair with you, this is about you. I want you to, if you don't tithe, I want you to try this as an experiment and don't give any of it to the church. I want you to just try it for yourself. Give it, spread it out. Find places where you want it to go and just try it and see. They went home and they said, let's give that a try. What have we got to lose? Let's just try it. This is what the article said. Almost immediately, a mysterious transformation took place. They found even with giving away 10%, they were able to save 10% of their income. At last, they retired their house mortgage ahead of schedule. Now, it made absolutely no practical sense. There's no practical evidence to say, how does that happen? They didn't have a bigger job paying more income, same income. It's mysterious. But because of their practical demonstration of their faith in God, they discovered God doing something that defied the practical evidence. Do you want to guess what kind of magazine this story was in? Surely it was in something like Christianity Today, right? The Christian Century. The story was in Forbes magazine, a business magazine. Forbes even suggested this idea of tithing as an investment strategy. Think about that. Something that church people say, no, don't talk about tithing. Forbes magazine is the one using it, going, well, you might give it a try. Who knows? I don't think Jesus would talk about it as an investment strategy. Here's a get-rich-quick scheme. But I think Jesus would say, yeah, when you make more room for God, you realize what God can pour into you. And this is why it's a reason for hope. Because when you do that, what you discover is you have a reason for being here. You have something to offer that God can use in your life to make a difference. And when you know that, you've got a reason for hope. The other morning, I met for breakfast a guy named Jay Height. He's the director of the Shepherd Community Center downtown that serves some of the poorest population in Indianapolis. He told me the story about a boy in the program some years ago named Brian. He said Brian's home situation was so hard. His mother was a prostitute, doing what she felt like she had to do to try to manage a house and 2 children. Brian had to be the sole caregiver for his little sister. So to have a place like the Shepherd Community to go to was healing for Brian. Well, every Christmas, they participated in Operation Christmas Child through Samaritan's Purse. You get real stories of children from around the world. You learn about their context and what they would love to have for Christmas. And you contribute those things. They put them in a box and send them to them. So they do this every year there at Shepherd. And one day, a volunteer came back to Jay's office and said, you need to come in here for a minute. He followed the volunteer into the room where everybody was bringing back their boxes, and she pulled out this box. You see it on the screen. Jay took a picture of it. It has 2 Matchbox cars in it. Those were the only items that Brian owned. That's all he had. 2 Matchbox cars. But he wanted to give them because it was an opportunity to help others. It gave him hope. Pastor Jen's preaching this today down at Midtown. And when I told her that story the other day, she made this sentence, and you might want to take a picture of it on the screen or write it down, because this one will be of meaning to you sometime or another. When we see we have something to give, we realize we are not empty. When we see we have something to give, we realize we are not empty. Jesus said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. What do you think?